The savannah was trembling with a muffled cry, sharp and desperate, like a torn breath from the throat of something too young to fight. The night wind whipped the grass in furious waves, masking the struggle until a faint thrashing gave it away. David whispered, "Something's out there." His flashlight cut through the darkness, the beam trembling as if it too feared what it would uncover. The cry sharpened, raw with terror, and Sarah clutched her chest as the sound pierced her. She murmured, "That's no grown beast, that's a calf." The group rushed forward, boots sinking into mud from a storm that had passed hours earlier, leaving the air heavy and damp. Each step carried dread, for every rescue started with horror. The beam struck metal. A crude snare clamped around the frail leg of a giraffe calf, its spotted hide shivering with panic. Blood stained the ground, black in the night. David dropped to his knees, choking back fury, and growled, "Damn poachers!" The calf's wide eyes rolled in terror, its cries breaking the silence of the plains. The story had begun not with peace, but with suffering. The cries grew sharper, cutting through the wind, pulling them closer like a compass of pain. David whispered, "Hold still, little one," though the calf could not understand. Sarah crouched, mud clinging to her knees, her voice trembling as she said, "We can't waste a second." The snare was biting deeper with every movement, slicing through flesh as if eager to silence the calf forever. Lightning still flickered faintly on the horizon, echoing the chaos in their hearts. David's hands hovered above the cruel trap, fingers shaking not from fear but from fury. He muttered, "These traps don't care if it's a calf or mother." Sarah glanced toward the dark plains, afraid of what else might lurk. The calf's body trembled harder, its breathing ragged, chest rising and falling like a broken drum. This was no ordinary beginning. It was a nightmare waiting to be undone. The calf jerked violently, eyes rolling, body collapsing against the grass, its cries cracking into silence for one unbearable second. Sarah gasped. "It's losing strength." Her hands reached forward, but stopped short, as if her touch might break what was left. David pressed his lips into a hard line, his voice rough. "We need to cut it free before shock sets in." The calf shuddered again, pulling weakly at the snare, the metallic rasp mingling with its moans. Every moment that passed felt stolen, each second dragging them closer to tragedy. In the distance, a hyena's cackle echoed, chilling and hungry. Sarah's eyes darted, whispering, "We're not alone out here." David glanced at her, then back to the calf, growling, "Then we move faster." Wind swept across the plains, bending grass like a tide, the sound masking the calf's fading cries. Sarah whispered, "It can't hold much longer." David reached into his pack, pulling out bolt cutters, the metal catching a sliver of moonlight. His voice carried steel. "This ends now." The calf's legs kicked weakly, blood soaking into earth, as though the land itself bore witness. Every breath it drew rattled like broken glass. Sarah wiped her eyes, muttering, "We can't fail, not again." David looked at her sharply but said nothing, the memory of past rescues gone wrong flashing behind his eyes. The calf let out a shriek, desperate and raw, its body twisting as if in one last attempt to escape. David steadied his cutters, breath slow but heavy, his voice sharp, "Hold it steady." Sarah pressed her palm against the calf's neck, whispering, "Shh, little one, we're here." Her voice cracked under weight of fear. The steel shone in the light, jaws poised to sever the cruel snare. The air was thick, every sound muffled except the pounding of hearts and the clink of metal. The world felt like it was holding its breath. David muttered, "One chance." The savannah seemed to lean in, waiting for the first cut. The snare finally snapped free with a harsh crack, the steel jaws falling open like a broken curse. The calf collapsed, breathing shallow, its body trembling from exhaustion. David whispered, "Easy, you're free now," though the calf's wild eyes still burned with fear. Sarah pressed her palm gently against its side, feeling the frantic heartbeat racing beneath spotted fur. She murmured, "It's just a baby. It doesn't even understand why this happened." David's jaw tightened, memories pressing against him like ghosts. He muttered, "I've seen this before. Last time, We were too late. The silence that followed carried weight heavier than the wind. Sarah lifted her gaze, whispering, "This time we won't fail." The calf shuddered, its breath sharp, caught between survival and collapse. The air seemed charged with promise and dread alike, binding their fates together. The calf shifted, trying to stand, but its legs buckled under pain. Sarah gasped, catching its neck to steady it. "Don't push too hard," she whispered, as though her voice could soothe its panic. David stared at the bleeding wound, the edges torn and raw. He muttered, "We'll need to clean this or infection will do worse than the snare." His tone was sharp, but his eyes betrayed fear. Sarah glanced at him, her voice softer. "You've carried this weight before, haven't you?" David didn't answer, his silence louder than words. The calf groaned, eyes rolling, and David finally whispered, "I lost one like this. I swore never again." The admission hung heavy, stitching his pain into the calf's suffering. Sarah said gently, "Then this is your redemption, for both of you." They worked quickly, pouring water from a battered canteen, washing blood and mud from the calf's leg. Sarah whispered, "Stay with us, little one," her voice trembling yet steady with resolve. David knelt opposite, tearing strips of cloth from his shirt to bind the wound. His hands shook as he muttered, "I can't lose another one, not again." The calf flinched under their touch, its eyes wide, torn between instinct to flee and need for help. Sarah leaned close, murmuring, "It's scared, like you are, but maybe it knows you're trying." David looked at her, his breath heavy, and for a moment his hardened resolve cracked. "If I fail now, I fail twice," he said, pressing the cloth tight against the wound. The calf's breathing steadied slightly, as if sensing their fragile bond. The Savannah wind softened, carrying the scent of damp earth, as silence wrapped around them. Sarah brushed the calf's head, whispering, "You're safe now," though she knew safety was still far. David sat back on his heels, staring at the calf's wounded leg, blood soaking into the makeshift bandage. He muttered, "This might not hold. And we're miles from camp." His voice cracked slightly, betraying exhaustion. Sarah met his gaze, firm and unyielding. "Then we carry it if we must." David exhaled sharply, almost a laugh. But the sound was hollow. He whispered, "You think compassion is enough?" She leaned closer, replying, "It's all that ever saves anything." The calf blinked slowly, its body pressing faintly against Sarah as if drawn to her calm. The night deepened, stars piercing through broken clouds, and the air grew colder. Sarah pulled her jacket around the calf, murmuring, "You're not alone tonight." Her eyes glistened, reflecting both moonlight and quiet resolve. David leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring into the distance. "Every rescue costs us something," he said softly. "But maybe that's the point." Sarah tilted her head, whispering, "It's not about what we lose, it's about what we give." The calf sighed, a low rumble that felt almost like gratitude, its body leaning into her warmth. For the first time that night, David allowed himself a small smile, faint but real. He murmured, "Then maybe this one will live." The bond was sealed, not just in survival, but in meaning. The night pressed heavier as the calf staggered on trembling legs, its body swaying like a fragile reed in storm winds. David caught its flank, muttering, "Easy, you're not strong enough yet." Sarah stepped closer, worry carved across her face. "If we don't move soon, predators will smell the blood," she whispered. In the distance, the faint yips of hyenas echoed, sending a chill down their spines. The calf struggled forward, stumbling into David, its weight collapsing against him. His jaw clenched. "It won't survive standing still," he muttered. Sarah reached for the medical kit, her voice urgent, "Then we stabilize now, or we'll lose it here." The plains felt alive with menace, every rustle a reminder that failure would not be quiet. The calf buckled again, crashing into the mud, its body shaking with exhaustion. Sarah gasped, kneeling beside it, whispering, "Stay with us." David crouched, fumbling for bandages, his hands quick but rough. He muttered, "This ground's too exposed. We need cover." A low growl carried across the wind, closer now. Sarah's eyes flicked toward the sound, panic flashing across her features. "They're hunting already," she said. David's gaze hardened, his voice sharp. "Then we fight time itself." He pressed fresh cloth against the wound, blood seeping through almost instantly. The calf groaned, body tensing, then sagged as though surrendering. Sarah's tears glistened in moonlight as she whispered, "No, not yet." Thunder rumbled again, clouds returning to swallow the stars. Sarah's voice quivered as she said, "Storm's not finished with us." David yanked his pack open, pulling gauze and antiseptic, muttering, "Neither are the poachers who set this." The calf whimpered, pressing its head against the ground. Sarah stroked it gently, whispering, "You're not their prize. Not tonight." A sudden flash of lightning lit the plains, revealing distant movement, shadows of hyenas circling closer. David spat, "Damn scavengers. They're waiting for us to fail." Sarah's hand tightened on the calf, her voice steady. "Then we don't give them failure. Not this time." Every word was an oath carried on the storm. Wind tore through the grass, and the calf tried again to rise, its legs trembling violently before collapsing once more. David caught its side, grunting, "Damn it. Stand if you can." Sarah snapped, "Don't push it too far. You'll kill it faster." Her voice cracked under pressure. David's breath came heavy, his eyes clouded by desperation. "If it can't move, we're finished," he said. Sarah shook her head, muttering, "Then we move it ourselves." Lightning flared again, thunder cracking loud enough to rattle their bones. The calf whimpered, struggling against its weakness while the hunters of the night drew ever nearer. Survival balanced on the edge of impossible. The first hyena cry pierced closer, no longer distant, sharp with hunger. Sarah stiffened, her voice breaking. "They're circling us." David rose quickly, flashlight beam sweeping across the darkness, catching glints of predatory eyes. His jaw tightened. "We hold this ground," he muttered, though his eyes betrayed doubt. The calf moaned, sinking deeper into mud, its energy bleeding away. Sarah dropped beside it, whispering fiercely, "Don't give up, you're stronger than this." The wind roared, lightning strobed, and the savannah became a stage of survival, predator and protector colliding. David muttered, "Then tonight, we fight both nature and man." The weight of his words hung heavier than thunder. The storm passed, leaving silence heavy and unsettling. Sarah bent to check the calf's wound, her voice trembling. "This wasn't accidental." David frowned, confusion tightening his features. She pointed to the cruel snare, its edges sharpened unnaturally. "This trap wasn't for chance, it was set for giraffes." David's fists clenched as memories stirred. "Poachers don't waste iron like this unless they're selling trophies." His voice cracked with rage. Sarah whispered, "It's deliberate, targeted cruelty." A gust rattled the grass, and for a moment, David's silence spoke more than his fury. "Someone knew this calf would pass here," he muttered darkly, "and someone wanted it dead." The revelation twisted the night. The danger was not only nature, but human hands orchestrating suffering. Sarah held the snare closer to moonlight, grim realization spreading across her face. "These aren't random hunters," she whispered. David's breath grew sharp, anger twisting into grim understanding. "This design. I've seen it before," he muttered, "from a ring that sells to collectors." His words carried bitter memory. The calf stirred weakly, moaning as if echoing their dread. Sarah said, "This isn't just cruelty, it's business." Her words made the savannah itself feel darker. David's gaze hardened, eyes burning. "Then we're not rescuing from chance," he said. "We're fighting someone's market." His voice was grave, the revelation shifting the rescue into war against greed. David's silence broke into harsh confession. "I lost one just like this years ago," he said, voice raw. "The trap was identical, and I was too late." Sarah looked at him, eyes softening despite the horror. "That's why you can't stop now," she said firmly. His gaze flicked to the calf, chest rising weakly, each breath a fragile tether. "It's repeating," David muttered. "History clawing back at me." Sarah gripped his arm, grounding him. Then rewrite it. Save this one even if it breaks you. The twist was no longer about poachers, it was about redemption. A hyena cackle pierced closer, sharp reminder that survival wasn't only about wounds. Sarah whispered, "They'll smell the blood." David stood, shoulders tense. "Then this place is a beacon, not just to predators, but to poachers." Sarah's heart clenched. If they return, they'll finish what they started. The thought weighed heavier than the storm. David's fists tightened around the broken snare. "This calf is evidence," he said, "proof of their trade." Sarah met his stare. And also their target again. Their revelation wasn't just about cruelty. It was about a war waiting at dawn. The calf groaned, trying to shift, its eyes glistening with exhaustion. Sarah stroked its neck, whispering, "You're part of something larger than you know." David's stare hardened, his voice a vow. "If poachers want this calf, they'll face me first." His words carried weight like steel. Sarah looked at him, eyes reflecting fire. "Then, we carry both its life and its truth." The air vibrated with tension, the twist reframing their mission. No longer rescue alone, but resistance. Dawn's first light broke, spilling across their faces like judgment. The truth had sharpened their fight. The hyenas closed in, their eyes glinting like embers. Sarah tightened her grip on the calf's neck. "We can't outlast them," she whispered. David's jaw set firm. "Then we don't wait." He snatched a flare from his pack, striking it alive with fiery red glow. The hyenas hesitated, circling wider, snarls echoing like drums. The calf flinched, body convulsing in fear. Sarah whispered, "Hold steady, we'll shield you." David waved the flare, firelight reflecting in his fierce eyes. "If they want this calf, they go through us." The moment burned with life or death gravity, the climax beginning in fire and fear. The flare hissed, smoke rising, but the hyenas pressed closer. Sarah shouted, "They're not afraid enough." David growled, "Then we make them afraid." He lunged forward, swinging the flare in wide arcs, sparks scattering. The predators recoiled, snarling, but their hunger refused retreat. The calf moaned, body limp, its energy draining fast. Sarah pressed her hand against its wound, whispering, "Stay with me, please." The clash wasn't only with beasts, it was against time itself. David's arms shook, exhaustion threatening to collapse him, but his voice thundered, "You won't have this one." The fight's peak roared with chaos. One hyena lunged, teeth flashing. David thrust the flare forward, sparks spraying across its muzzle. It yelped, retreating with a snarl. Sarah cried out, "They won't stop." Her voice cracked under strain. David shouted back, "Then neither do we." His arms swung wide again, fire tracing arcs of defiance. The calf twitched, trying to lift its head, its eyes wide with primal terror. Sarah pressed closer, tears streaking her cheeks. "Don't give up," she begged. The climax pressed harder, every second louder than thunder. The flare burned low, sparks fading. David's breath rasped, body shuddering with fatigue. Sarah's eyes widened. "It's dying out." Hyenas circled tighter, emboldened by dimming fire. David's voice rasped, "I've got one left." He pulled another flare, striking it alive with trembling hands. The sudden blaze roared to life, painting the scene blood red. Hyenas scattered back, but their growls deepened with hunger. Sarah clutched the calf tighter, whispering, "This is the last fight." David's eyes met hers, his voice a vow, "Then we win it or die with it." The climax balanced on flame and resolve. The hyenas made one final push, snapping jaws clashing against fire's edge. David roared, swinging flare with last reserves of strength. "I'll—" Sarah cried out, "Hold them back." The calf shuddered, a weak cry escaping its throat, as if pleading for life. David's body quaked, arms burning, yet his voice cut through storm and snarls. "Not this time." The predators finally faltered, retreating into the tall grass with angry cries fading. Silence returned, broken only by David's ragged breath and the calf's fragile heartbeat. Sarah pressed her forehead against the calf, whispering through tears, "You're alive. We did it." The climax ended in firelight and exhaustion, victory carved by inches. The last flare burned to ash, leaving the savannah bathed only in dawn's fragile light. David dropped to his knees, chest heaving, sweat soaking his shirt. Sarah stroked the calf's neck, her voice tender but tired. "It's over, little one. They're gone." The calf breathed shallowly, eyelids fluttering as exhaustion threatened to claim it. David whispered, "We bought it time, but will that be enough?" His tone carried doubt, but also hope buried beneath. Sarah turned to him, face streaked with tears and dirt. "Every second we gave it tonight mattered. That's survival." The air, once heavy with storm and blood, now felt gentler, almost forgiving. The calf shifted weakly, pressing against Sarah's hand as if in quiet gratitude. The resolution began not in triumph, but in fragile breaths that refused surrender. The silence stretched, broken only by distant birds greeting sunrise. Sarah smiled faintly, though her lips trembled. "Even the savannah sings for it." David looked at the calf's wound, the makeshift bandage soaked red. He muttered, "It's alive, but bleeding doesn't forgive mercy." His words carried weight of experience. Sarah touched his arm gently, whispering, "But it forgives effort, and tonight we gave all of it." The calf sighed, its head lowering into grass, eyes closing but chest still rising. David lowered his gaze, exhaling deeply. "Then maybe it has a chance." The world around them no longer felt hostile. It felt like it was watching, waiting to see if their fragile victory would hold. David leaned back, staring at the horizon, the weight of the night still pressing on his shoulders. "I thought I'd lose it like the last one," he admitted, his voice almost breaking. Sarah looked at him, her tone gentle but firm. "But you didn't. That's the truth that matters now." The calf stirred, stretching its neck slightly, small signs of strength returning. David's eyes softened, though weariness dimmed them. "It survived because of you," he whispered. Sarah shook her head, whispering back, "No, because of us, and because it refused to give in." The words lingered, stitched with fragile hope. The savannah, bathed in gold, no longer felt cruel. It felt redeemed, if only for this single moment. The calf attempted to rise again, its legs trembling like fragile branches. Sarah gasped, steadying its side. "Easy," she whispered. "You're not ready yet." David moved closer, supporting its other flank. His voice carried reluctant hope. "But it wants to stand." The calf wavered, nearly collapsing, then held itself for one long second. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "That's survival's first step." The moment was small, fleeting, but it was enough. David's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then maybe this fight wasn't just against death," he muttered. "Maybe it was for life itself." The savannah breeze carried their words away, mingling with the rising sun. The calf collapsed again, body folding gently into grass, but this time its breathing was steady. Sarah stroked its head, whispering, "We'll walk again. Just not today." David knelt, placing a hand on its side, his voice solemn yet calm. "We gave it dawn, and sometimes that's enough." The words carried more than comfort, they carried release. The savannah stretched endlessly, no longer threatening but embracing. Sarah leaned back, her face lifting to the sun, whispering, "It lived through the night. That's the victory." David nodded slowly, eyes soft, his burden finally loosening. The resolution was not perfect, but it was real, carried in the fragile breath of a calf that refused to die. Silence lingered, heavy yet tender, as if the savannah itself paused. Sarah whispered, "It survived because someone cared." David stared at the horizon, voice low. "Or maybe because it chose to fight alongside us." The calf shifted faintly, pressing closer to Sarah's hand, a quiet gesture of trust. Dawn spread brighter, painting the plains in fire gold. David's eyes glistened, his voice softer than the breeze. "This night will haunt me, but maybe not with failure this time. Sarah exhaled, whispering, "Then let it haunt you with hope." The words etched themselves into morning air. Bird song rose gently, filling the silence where Cries once lived. Sarah leaned close to the calf, whispering, "Your voice belongs to this place, not to pain anymore." David sat with shoulders slumped, his tone weary but certain. "We kept a promise tonight, even if it cost us everything." Sarah glanced at him, soft smile breaking through. "Promises like this are what save us too." The calf lifted its head slightly, eyes calmer, its breath steadying with the rhythm of dawn. The plains no longer felt like a battlefield. They felt like sanctuary claimed. David touched the broken snare lying in grass, his face carved with resolve. "This is proof of what they do," he said. Sarah's eyes hardened, her voice steady. "Then we don't just save lives, we fight for them all." The calf leaned weakly into her, as though sealing her vow. David held the twisted steel tightly, muttering, "They'll know someone stood against them here." His tone was not of anger, but of promise. Sarah whispered, "Let this life be the first step toward many more." The final beat began to form, not in silence, but in vows etched across dawn. The savannah breathed with new life, as distant herds stirred. Sarah looked at the calf, her voice a whisper of hope. "One day you'll walk with them." David's eyes followed the horizon where giraffes moved faintly in the distance. "It belongs to that world," he said softly. The calf groaned weakly but shifted its head, eyes drawn toward the herd's silhouettes. Sarah smiled through tears, whispering, "And we'll remember this night when we almost lost you but didn't." The scene carried weight beyond survival. It carried legacy. The calf rested again, its breath steady, eyes closing gently. Sarah whispered, "Sleep, little one. The world waits for you." David stood, staring at the horizon, the broken snare in one hand, the calf's survival in his heart. His voice cut the silence with finality. This was not just rescue. It was defiance. Sarah pressed her forehead to the calf's neck, whispering, "And love." The savannah shimmered under full morning light, eternal and vast. The story closed with one heartbeat, fragile, defiant, unforgettable.